Good morning, guys. How we doing? Good, doing well, good. Can I tell you, one of the things I love about the Bible is that it's real. And by that, I don't mean I love that everything in there is true and that it really happened. I mean, that's also important, and I do believe that it's true and that it really happened. But that's not what I mean in this particular instance. When I say that the Bible is real, what I mean is that the Bible is honest about the realities of this life. The Bible does not gloss over the pain and difficulties that many of us face. You're not going to read anywhere in here. It's not going to pretend like once you start following Jesus, when you give your life to Christ, that you won't have to face anything hard anymore, that life's just going to go smoothly for you and you're not going to have to face anything difficult or painful in your life. No, you'll never see anything where it talks about if you just have enough faith, then the Lord's just going to bless you. Jesus has got nothing but blessings for you, and he's going to prosper you financially, and he's going to make sure you're successful in life, you don't get sick or any of those things. You're not going to see that in here. You might find a TikTok preacher that'll tell you that, but he or she did not get that from the Bible. Bible is honest about the things that many of us will go through, and I'm glad for that. Like, I love the first 3 verses of Psalm 23 that we read yesterday. The Lord is my shepherd. He leads me beside still, quiet waters. He lets me lie down in green pastures. I'm so glad for that. I think that's beautiful and true. But if that's all the Bible ever talked about was green pastures and quiet waters, I think I might have a hard time trusting it. Because I've seen enough life to know better. The young man who's a part of our college ministry, who has a 12-year-old brother who for the last 2 years has been fighting a battle with leukemia, and it looked like he had beaten it. He was like so close to over it, and then last month things took this weird turn, and a complication with a surgery led to a week later this 12-year-old boy passing away. The family in our church with 3 boys, and the dad was this good, faithful follower of Jesus. He seemed to be a good dad and a good leader, and then something weird happened. Some switch flipped, and he ended up turning towards alcoholism, and he began to spiral, and he lost his job, and then he walked out on his family. Ended up homeless for a little while before, a couple years ago, taking his own life, leaving these 3 boys without a dad. The young woman in our church who longed and dreamed of the day she'd finally meet the man that she could marry and settle down with. And it finally happened. She meets this guy, actually a Christian guy in our church, and they get married, and she's so happy for 2 years. Because at that 2-year mark, he abandons her, leaving her heartbroken, devastated. I've seen enough to know that Christians are not immune to hard things in life. I'm guessing that many of you, even though you're younger than me, that you've seen enough to know that Christians are not immune to hard things. I'm guessing you've seen it, but the Bible is real about this. It's honest about these truths. Man, when you read through the Psalms, you will see the highest of highs. You'll read Psalms where they'll talk about, man, the Lord is good and his love endures forever, and he takes care of us and he protects us. He is our strength and our shield. And you'll read other Psalms that are the lowest of lows, where the writer's saying things like, where are you, God? Like this might not be true, but it feels like you're ignoring us. It feels like you're not with me. It feels like you don't see what's happening in my life. You'll see people at the very bottom and up at the very top, and I love that the Bible can be honest about those things. I'm grateful that the same David who writes the first 3 verses of Psalm 23 also writes verse 4, which says, even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So there are different categories of Psalms. There's 150 Psalms in here, and they're not all the same. They don't read all the same. There's different types. There's some Psalms that are called songs of lament, which are Psalms that are meant to be sung in a time of sadness. There's some that were called pilgrimage songs, and these were the different songs that the people of God would sing on their way to the holy city of Jerusalem. There's some that were like corporate worship psalms. You would sing those together with the people in the temple courts. Psalm 23 fits in a category called Psalms of Trust. These are Psalms in which the writer declares their trust in God even in the middle of a very difficult or scary period of life. And we don't know exactly what the scary period, what the difficulty is that David is going through here. He calls it the darkest valley, or in some of the more kind of well-known translations, he calls it the valley of the shadow of death. And we don't know exactly what it is that he's working through, but what we do know, it's pretty clear that David understands, he grasps this truth, that life is not all green pastures. It's not always easy. Notice what David says. It's not if I walk through deepest valleys, it's when. It's going to happen. Oh, and David is well aware of that. He's a young man, he's about your age. When the prophet Samuel makes this secret mission to his father's house. And he goes and he hunts through all of Jesse, that's David's father, all of Jesse's boys until he finally comes to David, and he anoints David as the rightful king of Israel. Now, the reason this is a secret mission is because that act right there is an act of treason. There's already a king in Israel, King Saul. And yet the prophet says, God has chosen you, David. Now, David could have in that moment decided, all right, God's chosen me. I'm the man now. And he could have tried to make a claim for the throne at that moment. He could have tried to start a revolution and go get what was rightfully his. David doesn't do that. He decides to wait on the Lord's timing, to be patient. He even ends up serving King Saul in his courts and as a leader in Saul's army. And you know how that works out for David? It works out with King Saul trying to kill him. And David has to live his life on the run, out in the wilderness. He's supposed to be the rightful king of Israel. Instead, he's being hunted down by the armies of Israel. And I don't know if that's the dark valley that David is talking about here, but I know there had to be some moments at least where David is thinking, seriously, God. I didn't choose this. I didn't try to make myself king. You told me I was going to be king, and I'm trying to do the right thing, and this is how this is working out for me? Maybe that's what he's talking about in Psalm 23. Maybe he's talking about something that happened shortly before his 30th birthday, when his best friend in all the world was killed in battle. Maybe he's actually writing about something that happened several years later when he had a newborn baby boy, and that baby boy lives for about a week or two before dying. He might be talking about something that happened much later when another one of his sons turns on him, starts a coup, and gets all of Israel to turn on him so that David and his family have to flee Jerusalem for their lives. I don't know what exactly David is writing about in this moment. What I know is that David is no stranger to dark valleys. And some of those valleys he brings on himself. Some of those are a result of his own sinfulness, the consequences that he deals with. Some of them are not at all. Some of them are just things that happen to him. But he's no stranger to dark valleys. And my guess is, actually, based on what just happened here, when Caleb asked some of you to stand, I know that a number of you in here are no stranger to dark valleys. Some of you have been through it. Some of you in here watched your family be torn apart by your parents' messy divorce. And you felt caught in the middle of this as you watched all the stability and security of your home just crumble around you. Some of you in here are dealing with really difficult, debilitating mental illness. Not just like the normal worries and anxieties that we all experience from time to time, but like a clinical level mental illness that just has its claws in you, and you want to break free of it, and you want to not deal with this anymore, but it seems like you can't get out of it. There are some of you in this room who, by your own sinful decisions, you have hurt the people you love most. You've severed relationships with friends and family members, and you don't know how to fix it. Or you walk around with the shame of all these secret sins, and you don't know how to get rid of those. I don't know what it is for you, but I just know that there are some of you in here who right now, in this moment, you feel like you are in the middle of the darkest valley. You feel stuck in it. You feel alone in it, and like you cannot find your way out. And you might be asking yourself, or you might be asking God right now, where are you in all this? Like, what happened to green pastures? What happened to still, quiet waters? Aren't you supposed to be leading me to those things? And the answer is yes. Yes, he is and he will, but the path to green pastures might not always look like we expect. I had the opportunity this last January to go to Ireland, actually, to travel to Ireland with CIY Engage. I actually went and visited the Riot House that you guys are raising money for to help them buy and put to get some new property, a new building there. I got to hang out with Richie and Aiden. It was awesome. Would highly recommend any sort of CIY Engage trip that you can go on. But I loved my time in Ireland. It was a beautiful country. Everything about it, the architecture, the landscape, everything about it was beautiful. But the first thing I noticed when I landed in Ireland, actually before I've even landed, I'm looking out the plane as I go down. The first thing that you notice in Ireland is how green everything is. So green that I thought it was fake. Like I thought that the airport had spray painted all the grass green around it as sort of a gimmick. You know, it's supposed to be the Emerald Isle, and so maybe they're kind of doing this as like a thing to kind of show off their Emerald Isle-ness or whatever it is. No, it's real, because I'm going there in the middle of January, and I'm like, nothing is this green in January. Ireland is. All year long, it's wall-to-wall green pastures, which is why Ireland is such a great place for sheep. Sheep and wool are some of like the primary like exports. They're some of the primary like staples of the Irish economy because there's just green pastures everywhere you look. It's a great place for sheep to be. And I think a lot of us, when we read Psalm 23, we have that picture in mind. We have miles and miles of rolling green hills. That's not the picture David has when he writes Psalm 23. David doesn't write this from Ireland. David writes this from the semi-arid climate of Israel, which does have its green pastures, especially during the two rainy seasons. But during the rest of the year, those green pastures are few and far between. They exist, but the shepherd is going to have to lead his sheep through some wilderness and sometimes through some dark valleys to get to those green pastures. That's what our life is like. And the Bible is honest about that. The Bible never promises that life is just one giant green pasture that we'll never have to walk through valleys to get there. But it does promise this, that those who know Jesus will never walk through those valleys alone. That leads us to the second thing that David knows in this psalm, and that is this: even in dark valleys, our good shepherd is with us. Look at verse 4 again. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger. Listen, he doesn't say I will face no danger, but I will fear no danger. Why? Why does he not have to fear danger? It says this: for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Your rod and your staff, these are these two instruments that the shepherd had, two tools at his disposal. The rod was more of like a club-like tool that he could use to attack predators as they came to try to attack the sheep. And the staff was more kind of a longer, narrower thing that he could use to guide and navigate his sheep through difficult terrain. And so the picture that David is describing here is that God is a shepherd who, even as he guides me, at the exact same moment, he also fights for me. Even as he leads me, he is working to defend me. That's the kind of shepherd that David has, and that is the kind of shepherd that you have. For everyone in here who has put their faith in Jesus, that's the shepherd you have. Yesterday we read these words from John 10, where Jesus describes himself as the good shepherd who leads his sheep and who knows them by name and who lays down his life for them. But, he says, not all people who watch the sheep are like that. John 10, verse 12 through 13 says this: the hired hand, since he is not the shepherd and doesn't own the sheep, leaves them and runs away when he sees a wolf coming. The wolf then snatches and scatters them. This happens because he is a hired hand and doesn't care about the sheep. You see, there are some shepherds that people look to who aren't true shepherds. They're just hired hands. We spoke about some of these yesterday. It might be money, or it might be success, or it might be people or relationships or whatever it is that people will look to be their shepherd. And those kinds of shepherds, they'll be with you in the good times, but they will quickly abandon you in the dark valley. right? Like you can put all your security into money and it'll be really good for you for a time, but one bad turn in the stock market and that shepherd is going to bail on you. You can put all your hope in your health, in eating healthy and clean and in exercising and in your beauty routines, but all of that is out the window when cancer comes. That's not how Jesus works, though. Jesus is different. Look at what he says in verse 14. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for my sheep. You see, Jesus is no hired hand. He's not just in this for the pay. He knows his sheep. That's you. He loves his sheep. That's you. And he would lay down his life before he abandons you. Your health may fade away. Jesus won't. Your parents, one of your parents may have bailed on you. They may have walked out on you and your family, but this good shepherd will never walk out on you. You may have burned every bridge you have through your own decisions, and your friends might all, every last one of them, they might just be done with you. Jesus isn't done with you. Jesus always stands there with open arms, ready to forgive, ready to bring you in, ready to make you his. He is a good shepherd who is with us in our highest points and in our lowest. He is a good shepherd who loves and cares for us when we are at our best and when we are at our worst. The same Jesus who lets you lie down in green pastures will also be with you in the darkest valleys. So here's the question for you this morning. Do you see him? Are you keeping your eyes on Jesus in the midst of those dark valleys, or do you have your attention somewhere else? There's this really cool thing that happens in the middle of Psalm 23. I don't know if you noticed this shift that takes place. I confess, I've read this psalm my entire life, and I totally missed this until it was pointed out to me recently. For the first half of the psalm, David consistently refers to God in the third person. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He leads me along the right paths for his name's sake. But then right there in the middle of the psalm, right there in the middle of verse 4, right there in the middle of the darkest valley, there's this shift. Did you notice it? I will fear no danger, for you are with me. See, David's no longer speaking in third person. David's no longer talking about God. Now David is talking to God. Because he knows that here in the middle of the darkest valley, you are with me. He knows that God is with him, and he's got his eyes fixed on his shepherd. And that last part is critical. For those who are in Christ, Jesus is always with us in the middle of our hardship, always with us in the middle of our pain. But the rest that he offers to us, so many of us, I think, miss out on it because we take our eyes off of him. So many of us miss out because we got our eyes on other things, namely ourselves and our problems. I see students do this a lot. Students that might be genuinely struggling with something like anxiety or depression, but in the end, those problems continue to look bigger and bigger. They're magnified because that's where all their attention is. They spend far more time thinking about and talking about their anxiety than they do Jesus, their shepherd. And it's no wonder that if you are constantly looking at this, that your anxiety is going to look big and Jesus is going to look small, or he's going to look distant, or he's going to look like he can't help you. You've got to take your eyes off of this and put your eyes on your shepherd. How do you do that? He's not like physically there, so how do I look at Jesus? How do I keep my eyes on him? The answer is, I keep my eyes on him through this. I need to be a person who's got my eyes fixed on Jesus through truths that are told to me about him over and over again through his word. I fix my eyes on Jesus when I gather together with his people and I worship him and I proclaim truths about him, and that fixes my gaze in the right direction. I fix my eyes on Jesus when I memorize scriptures that tell me about his goodness, that tell me about his power, that tell me about his faithfulness, so I can recall those things in the middle of dark valleys. And here's the thing, you might not be in a valley right now. Life might be good for you. But you need to start bringing those habits into practice. You need to start doing those things so when you hit the dark valley, you've got eyes to see them. Here's the thing We know that Jesus is always with us. Question is, where are you looking? Do you see him? He's there with you. Life will be hard sometimes. We will go through valleys. The good news is that no matter what, you will never walk through those valleys alone. Our good shepherd always, can you see him? Always goes with us. See you guys tomorrow.